to the border with Rwanda, and eventually to the border with the Sudan. This one we don't have to do all of them with soft loans from China. Many of them we shall finance ourselves, but we cooperate by providing contract labor on good terms by the Chinese companies, Chinese railway building companies. We also, using our own money, hire Chinese companies for doing road works, upgrading. You have lower transport costs, lower electricity costs. That means more companies will be attracted to come to Uganda because they will be able to make more profit.
This is the journey to One Africa.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time. It's been a long journey to where you are today. I'd like you to take us back to how it all started for you, to your childhood. What were some of your most memorable times as you were growing up, and how did you get where you are, and what inspired you from the beginning?
Well, childhood was about our traditional ways of life, which was cattle keeping. Along the way, we got into modern education. That time, the target was to get education so that either you work for the government or you improve your farming activities. However, along the way, we got into political crisis, especially the governments killing people, extrajudicial killings, and then also not accepting the power of the population, democracy. And that's how now we had to change, to go from just farming and working for the government and start struggling for getting rid of these problems from our country.
At what point did you yourself, though, decide that you wanted to get involved in politics?
Well, we could say around, even when I was in the secondary school, I was already involved. I was a youth winger of one of the political parties. Now, the big problem we had at that time was people exploiting the politics of identity, of tribe, of religion. Now, by 1965, which is like 53 years ago, that's when we formed the first non-sectarian student group, where we started the campaigning against politics of identity. Then eventually when the government collapsed, because the government had three crises, or four. The one of 1964, when the coalition collapsed, there was a coalition of two political parties. When it collapsed, the one of 1966, when there was a fight between the Prime Minister and one of the kings here. And then the one of 1969, when the Prime Minister was shot, Obote. And then 1971, when Amir came into government. So along the way, we were consolidating our student group. And by 1971, when Amin came into government, that's when we decided to go from peaceful politics to fighting. So that's the history.
So when you went from peaceful politics to fighting, there were people that you fought alongside, you know, during that period. You were in that war in the 70s, in the 80s. There were leaders across Africa that probably impacted your position. Who were some of those people that impacted what you did at the time?
Well, we could say indirectly we had some example from the freedom fighters in Mozambique. Our reasoning was that if they could fight the colonial armies, how can we fail to fight our local dictators? You could say they influenced us, not directly, but indirectly by example.
Right, so when we get to 1986, and I want to go to your inauguration on January of 1986, and you said, as Uganda was changing, as you were taking over, you said, this is not a mere change of guard, it is a fundamental change. How big has that change been for Uganda in your eyes?
There are very many elements of that change. The first one was to go from the politics of identity to the politics of interests. Do you speak Swahili?
I speak Swahili, I'm from Kenya.
What we call in Swahili, maslahi. Maslahi.
Maslahi ya wananchi.
Yes. So we should concentrate on interests rather than asili ya mutu, the identity of a person. It doesn't matter who you are, what religion, but what are your legitimate interests, like prosperity. We want all our families to be prosperous. They need to sell their products, to sell their services. So the politics should be around organizing for them infrastructure, markets, so that they sell their products and become prosperous. That's what politics should be about, not about this religion, that tribe. So that was one of the fundamental changes in our politics. Then, of course, we had a disciplined army. One of the problems of Uganda was a very indisciplined army, which was also sectarian, based on tribes again. Then education. We have launched massive education and other elements, infrastructure, commercializing agriculture, industrialization, economic integration in Africa, to make Africa one, economically, but even politically. We aim at the East African Federation. So these were the fundamental positions we were insisting on, rather than the politics of who you are and which religion you belong to.
And that is one of the graces, of course, of Uganda when you look at it compared to your neighbor Kenya, and I'm saying that from a position where the politics of tribe is still very much the key there. When it comes to politics and democracy, the politics of Africa is not a one-fit-all, because South Africa and Ethiopia have a very strong party system. You look at Kenya with very strong tribal systems. You look at Botswana and Rwanda with a different system. And you also look at Swaziland, which is still a monarchy. When it comes to African politics, what is your view, though, on what model Africa should adopt?
As you say, we cannot have a shoe which fits all. But to have a healthy situation, it's really good to have politics based on the popular will of the people. Whether the popular will is expressed through parties or through what they call proportional representation, that's a detail. But the fundamental basis that the people should elect their governments at regular intervals.
When we elect our governments at regular intervals, of course, there has been that debate, particularly from Western countries, as to exactly how Africa should elect and at what position or at what time that mandate should be put there. What is your take when it comes to Uganda?
No, those are mistaken positions. What is crucial is substance, not form. What some of the people talk about are simply forms. But the substance is, do you have elections by secret ballot, free elections by secret ballot at regular intervals. That's what is the minimum, in my opinion.
Do you see that working for Africa?
Yes, it should. It should, because the Africans are people who know how to choose what is bad and what is good. And even when they make mistakes, they can correct it. You are talking about Kenya. Kenya had gone into tribal politics, but you can see they are gradually getting out because they have found that that it has got problems.
What is your view, though, of Uganda's political future?
Political future of Uganda is good because we solved all the issues in the past when we gave power to the people. There's some corruption which we are struggling with, but that's also not a problem because there is a way out if people will vote you out if you become unpopular. So that's not a problem really, which is incurable.
Right, I do want to come back briefly to the status of your country, because you gave the BBC an interview in 2011 and you said you wanted to leave two things in your legacy. One of them was the socio-economic transformation of Uganda, and the second was turning the country into a first world and an East African federation. How successful do you think you have been on those two fronts?
Well, on the East African Federation, we are working with our brothers in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, in Burundi, in South Sudan. You could go to Arusha and they tell you how far we have gone. I am told they have now agreed on the idea of a confederation. So that one is moving. The common market is doing very well. We have the common market, we have the customs union. Those are working well. It is the other two stages that we are still targeting, the monetary union and the political federation. But what we have covered is good. About socio-economic transformation, the literacy rate in Uganda today is 75%. It used to be 40%. Life expectancy has gone to 63. 3 years instead of 43. It has gone up 20 years in spite of the AIDS epidemic. So you can imagine what it would have been if we did not have the problem of AIDS. So we are moving well.
But in the region, though, you still have a lot of problems, or the region still has a lot of problems from South Sudan now. As a leading member of IGAD, though, what is your take on the ongoing South Sudan peace talks in Addis?
Well, the politics of South Sudan is precisely what one should not do, because it is based on sectarianism of religion, especially of tribe in the case of South Sudan. That's where the problem is.
Is the region, though, becoming fatigued with the South Sudanese crisis, or are IGAD member states going to continue with that up to the end?
They can't be fatigued. We were not fatigued with the problem of South Africa, which went on for years. We were not fatigued with the problems of the slave trade. Slave trade went on for 300 years. We shall continue until it will be solved.
Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we will hear the President's insights on a number of issues that the continent faces today. Stay with us.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
And before we continue my conversation with President Museveni, earlier my colleague Lee Chianwa also spoke with the President. They discussed China-Uganda and China-African relations. Let's take a listen.
First of all, the Chinese Communist Party supported us when we were fighting against colonialism, right from 1949. We also supported them in their struggle for their rights in the United Nations. We have therefore been cooperating with China ever since 1949, when there was a new leadership. In recent times, China supported Africa in fighting the colonial regimes in Southern Africa. After that, we are now cooperating with China in infrastructure. They have given us soft loans for building two dams, Karuma and Isimba. They have also given us a soft loan for the Entebbe Expressway and for the international airport. One of the big ones which is in the pipeline is the Uganda railway, standard gauge railway, from Kenya to Kampala, from Kampala to the border with Congo, to the border with Rwanda, and eventually to the border with the Sudan. This one we don't have to do all of them with soft loans from China. Many of them we shall finance ourselves, but we cooperate by providing contract labor on good terms by the Chinese companies, Chinese railway building companies. We also, using our own money, hire Chinese companies for doing road works, upgrading. You have lower transport costs, lower electricity costs. That means more companies will be attracted to come to Uganda because they will be able to make more profit, and they will create more jobs. They will earn foreign currency for the country. It is a benefit in so many areas, jobs, exports. Besides, they have opened for us zero tax rate and without quota Chinese market for 440 products. We are therefore very happy. We also buy a lot of things from China. The value of our imports from China is like $800 million a year. So we are cooperating very much for mutual benefit. What we would want is for them to open their markets more for our products.
I do want Your Excellency to talk a bit about what my colleague mentioned earlier on, and that is the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, because China has now overtaken the West as Africa's leading trade and investment partner since 2009, although the balance of trade is still very much in favor of China. How can Africa make this a win-win cooperation?
By producing for export. Because the Chinese buy a lot of things from outside, and Africa can supply them. What we should demand from the Chinese is for them to allow our exports into China. They have already allowed some, but we want more. That's all. The rest we shall sort out.
Because the upcoming Forum on China-Africa Cooperation is going to provide African leadership a platform where they can speak in one voice. What is it that African leaders are going to be going to Beijing with?
Well, my proposal to them is, I normally talk of what I call ITT, investments, trade, and tourism. That's what we would need from China. Bring investments if you can. Let us trade with you, as we are doing now. but do it in a balanced way. Bring tourists. That would be a simple formula of how we can cooperate with China.
With the CFTA, now there's going to be a market of 1.2 billion for Africa here, though 44 countries already have signed up. How do you see this cooperation between China and Africa being impacted by the CFTA?
Of course, it will be very much impacted, because that means Africa becomes one market. And it is 1.2 billion now, but it will be, we shall be 2.5 billion very soon. Africa is the continent of the future, as long as we solve our problems. So anybody who wants to do serious business will have to work with Africa.
What do you make, though, of the West's concerns that perhaps Africa is taking on too much debt from China, because China is heavily invested in Africa's infrastructure, in its railways, in its ports? What do you make of that assertion? That's
not correct, because the potential of Africa is very big. It's much bigger than this retro debt they are talking about. The potential. You borrow to invest in order to unleash the potential. What is the potential? You ask them, those who talk to you like that, what is the potential of Uganda? If all the Ugandans wake up, how much will they produce? How about Kenya? So they shouldn't look at this small debt. How much is the debt? Even if it is 10 billion, 20 billion, the potential of Africa is much, much bigger than that. Unless they misuse the money and they don't develop they don't use the money to unleash the potential. That's where the problem can be. But otherwise, the money by itself, if it is properly used, it is very good.
And global dynamics are now changing as well. China being part of the BRICS countries here. What are your expectations, though, with the upcoming BRICS summit? What do you see as the impact that the BRICS system has had on Africa?
The BRICS, or any international organization, should focus on prosperity for all of us through trade of goods and services, and in some cases investment, like I said. If we focus on balanced prosperity for all of us, no selfishness, no desire to take advantage of others, then everybody will be all right, because business will grow. For instance, if China buys our textiles, that means we get money. Then we also buy something from China, because we have money from what they bought from us. But if they only export to us and we don't export to them, in the end the trade will not expand, because we shall have no money in our pockets. If we don't have money in our pockets, our purchasing power is low. So we can't buy more from China or from the United States or from whoever. So it is, when China was developing, from being a poor country to being a rich country, the price of steel went up. The price of copper went up. The price of cement went up. The price of cotton went up. So we benefited. The prosperity of China benefited us, because they were demanding more things, more copper for electricity, more steel for infrastructure, more cement, more cotton for factories, and we were benefiting from that prosperity. So universal prosperity will benefit everybody. The idea that you should have a few islands of prosperity surrounded by a sea of backwardness is stupid. It is not a clever idea. It is by people who don't see far.
So you have watched Africa's evolution from the liberation days onto the democratic days, onto you know, the free market economy kind of system. Take us back to how you have viewed Africa's trajectory over the last 30, 40, 50 years.
Well, when we had a meeting with Japan in Nairobi, I pointed out 10 bottlenecks, and I can give, my people can give you a copy. Africa has delayed somehow because they were not identifying all the bottlenecks. They would identify one of the bottlenecks or two and forget about the others. But my view is that you need to handle all of them at the same time, the 10 bottlenecks. They are mentioned in that speech. They will give it to you, you will see it. For instance, I told you about ideology. If you emphasize identity, acidity, and you forget maslahi, interest, that's a mistake. You will run into problems. If you do not concentrate on the issue of the market, integrating the African market, because Africa is a big market of 1.2 billion people, but it is fragmented by the colonial boundaries. So if you don't bring, me, I'm a milk producer. I produce milk. But the price of milk had collapsed. Why? Because Uganda is now producing 2.5 billion liters of milk, but the Ugandans are drinking only 800 million liters. So there's a surplus of 1.7 billion. Now, if it was not for East Africa and Congo, my prosperity would have collapsed. We must form the regional blocks, the COMESAs, the ECOWAS. In the past, they were not identified. They would identify, for instance, education. Education, education, education. But if you educate people, but they have no jobs, why don't they have jobs? Because there are no factories. Why are there no factories? Because the electricity is not there. So what will be the use of education? They will end up being part of the diaspora. They will have to migrate and go to look, part of the brain drain. They call it a brain drain. So you need to handle all the bottlenecks together. That was the problem, in my opinion, from my almost 60 years of watching what has been happening in Africa. As
you continue leading Uganda, and when you look into the future, what kind of a legacy would you want to leave for Uganda?
The legacy is for Uganda to understand the 10 bottlenecks and deal with them. Together with our brothers in Africa. That's what I want.
Your Excellency, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is the journey to one Africa.